Welcome back, everyone, to New Heart Healing Together. Today we have a very special guest, David Sauve, and we're going to be hearing about his story and going into nice spiritual topics. So, if you want to take it away, David, what is your background? What is your story? Whatever you feel like sharing.
A little bit about me and my journey is, I was born and raised in kind of a um, very traditional Christian evangelical background, and then kind of veered away from that for a while, and went my own way, as well as experiencing a lot of different autoimmune and health complications that kind of led me down a path of exploration of the body and how to better understand that. And so through all that, it's kind of, what's brought us together today.
It's kind of a rabbit hole. When you have to start focusing on health or something, it just leads deeper and deeper, especially with all the poisons, chemicals, all the crappy stuff out there. I feel like.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And so, this learning more about the wisdom of the body, right? Because we were definitely created in divine design. And so the body's created to it's designed to heal itself. Um, the most important part, though, is giving it an optimal environment. And if we don't give it an environment to do so, it's going to be really hard, because then the toxins, the mental, physical, spiritual, emotional toxins as well, just continue to build up and up and up and up. And so for me, what I realized is ultimately, yes, part of it is removing the toxic environment, but another part of it is getting into a optimal or a harmonic environment with
Right.
nature. So
Right.
yeah, yeah.
It must be interesting seeing the physical I don't want to say manifestation, but the physical like healing going on. Do you often see physical with spiritual going hand in hand? So when someone's spiritual health improves, so does their physical.
Oh, absolutely. I think it all goes hand in hand. And if anything, I think that it's our mind that creates the separations, right?
Yep.
I think we can approach it from many different perspectives, right? Like we can approach it from a physical perspective. We can approach it from a psychological or a spiritual perspective. But it's really all a matter of finding what is that rock that's holding the dam back, and allowing yourself to just remove the rock so it can flow again. Um, and for me, I feel like, yeah, approaching it and this is why I like the concept of holistic health, is approaching it from a holistic perspective. That way we're looking at everything, because, I've had a lot of seesaws, teeter-totters throughout the year of like, oh, it's all spiritual. If I just address all the spiritual aspects of it, then I'll be healed. And ultimately, I've realized that it's never a complete picture until we can address and look at all the aspects of our life. Now, I do think that there are certain vantage points that will give you more leverage in life than others, and sometimes people are experts in the small stuff, right? And they're looking at
Yep.
the wrong direction. But I do think it's all important.
No, I've fallen into that mindset a few times too. Just it's so easy to just have it be simple and just say, "Oh, it's only spiritual, it's only spiritual." But if your body's not functioning optimally, then of course your spirit is not going to be able to function perfectly in your body as well. It makes perfect sense. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Because ultimately, right, like our body is a vessel, it's the temple of our spirit. And so if our body is not inhabitable to the spirit, it's going to be really hard to be embodied. And so embodiment can take many different forms, it can look many different ways, but I do think um a big part of that is having more of a somatosensory awareness, or understanding the body and picking up on the subtle energies as energy is becoming more stagnant in the body, and it allows us to kind of unwind that.
Right.
um,
I mean, you can kind of see that in acupuncture even. just the releasing, exactly like you said, removing the rocks to let the dam flow. They do that at the physical level
Absolutely.
even,
Yeah,
and
yeah. Acupuncture is
incorporates all three. Yeah.
acupuncture is a great example of that, because ultimately what acupuncture is doing, on an energetic level, is it's not necessarily creating more energy in the body. It's just releasing bent up energy that's stored in places that maybe it doesn't want to be held. And like that's really what it's all about, is continuing the flow of energy. Because if you think about it, energy is, energy in motion, emotion, energy in motion, and information is energy into formation. And when we can't allow those things to um metabolize, then it can become stagnant and get really
Yeah,
sticky.
that's fascinating because that just got me thinking that about how even in molecules, the more hot, or I guess the hotter the temperature, the molecules move faster. The more alive it is, the faster the molecules move versus like ice or even dead bodies or dead things. It's just completely
Exactly.
dead still. And
Exactly. And yeah, yeah. At the end of the day, it's all energy, right? It's
right,
all energy, emotion, energy in motion. And if you can look at things, and even Nikola Tesla, said this, if you look at things within the order of 3, 6, 9, and 12, energy, information, energy and frequencies, you'll understand the secrets of the universe. And I truly believe that to be true. When we can look at things more in a frequency manner, whether it be oscillating or vibrating at different, wavelengths, we can have a much better understanding of how to move this stuff um, unadulterated.
absolutely. Yeah, one of the things in my experiences has kind of been also seeing how at the physical, the tension in our bodies a lot of times are the tension, like manifestations of the tensions of our mind and soul, even if it's past stuff, the stuff we're holding on to, even subconsciously can
Yeah,
still manifest as the physical tension that you can really feel that does bother you.
absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. And like I was saying, approaching it from all angles, being introspective about this stuff is really important. And I do believe that, based off where I'm at right now, like my belief is always subject to change based off my experience, right? But what I believe to be true right now is that a lot of it does actually stem from psychospiritual traumas that are held in the body, and then they manifest and they become, physical dis-ease or disharmony within the body. And so when we do look at things from an energetic perspective or a frequency perspective, if it is actually stemming back from some sort of psychospiritual fragmentation, then maybe that is a great place to start. Maybe that's a
Yeah.
great place to start. Now, that being said, that stuff may have become manifest for so long and been stagnant for so long that the physical manifestation also then needs to be addressed. But if you don't get to the root of the root, which
Right.
is some more so some sort of psychospiritual component, then it will continue to manifest in different ways.
Dude, yeah, I'm right in the same wavelength. I always talk about finding the roots for stuff, and that's been my experience as well. Is sometimes you have the roots for so long it branches off and creates kind of like that would be the core root. So it creates kind of like branch roots almost that are kind of smaller, but you still have to address those as well, just because that first root got so big and has been there for so long. Yeah.
Absolutely. And like, to tie it back into the physical, like you were talking about the hot, cold, and even on a cellular level, how these molecules, speed up or slow down based off the frequency or the temperature, depending, on the perspective we're looking at it. And this is what I talk about too. So another layer about who I am and what I do is, within the holistic field, I'm what's called a wellness advisor at a regenerative medicine clinic. Regenerative medicine, and our space is called Pure Life Medical. And I basically talk to people about this all day. And so I talk to them about the cell, and I use this physical or this visual example. I say, everything in the body is hydration and energy. And anytime we lack hydration, or energy in the body, our body is disharmonious. And so like within the cell, we have this timing clock, right? The cellular metabolism, also known as diurnal or circadian rhythm. And as that timing clock gets off, it affects our cell's ability to bring in nutrients and oxygen and other gases, obviously, to create energy or ATP and hydration within the cell and within the body, as well as detoxify. And so as that goes down, the rest of the metabolism within our body goes down. And so when we can look at it on a cellular level, as we can turn those clocks back on, and a lot of times I'm talking about light because we're talking about the red light spectrum in particular, when we can use light, which is just another frequency, including the far or deep infrared light that hits that clock, turns it back on. And so now our cells are communicating with other cells through what's called the redox process, as well as bringing in nutrients to create energy in the body. And then another thing that happens is now we're detoxifying. We're detoxifying all these toxins that our fat cells and our other cells were holding on to because the primary organs were overloaded. And then so as we turn this clock back on, we turn the cellular metabolism back on, now our body's metabolism turns back on. And so that's a very physical example, but now let's look at that in the psycho-spiritual perspective. Because if everything is metabolism, everything is hydration and energy and frequency, now on a psycho-spiritual level, the same is true. So the metabolic function of the body and the way that the body is responding to our environment and to the stimulus that we are putting in, on, and around our body actually has an effect on not only our cells, but on our spirit and on our soul. And so the way that we metabolize can be also correlated to the way that we metabolize emotion, energy and motion. And so emotion is merely a reaction or a response, depending on your awareness of it, to a sensation through stimuli in the body. And so when we can look at things as merely sensations within the body and allow that emotion or energy and motion or thought form, right, to move through the body as it wants to, and we're present with it non-judgmentally, it can actually metabolize the way that it needs to, as opposed to how we believe or our thoughts hold on to how we're supposed to do that.
So it's kind of with going back to the cells with the red light, it pretty much jump starts the cells. Would kind of be a way of thinking about it.
Yeah. And so the red light is like, it's like it's like having jumper cables for your car. The red light is like jumper cables for your cells.
That's what I was thinking. Yeah.
Yeah. And then on a psycho-spiritual level, when we do these energetic practices, when we have prayer or intention, and we put that in, intention, right? Intention is to put energy into tension within the body to create movement. When we do that, it allows these thought forms, these emotions to move through the body. So
very beautiful way of looking at it. I really love that a lot. And one of the things I was thinking of while you were talking is it's almost like how you're saying that it's the same spiritually as it is physically. I think the hydration, we do need our spirits to be hydrated as well, because there is that constant steady flow from God, like every time we take a breath. So that is, I think our relationship, of course, with him, whether it's growing closer or further away, am I making sense here? I feel like our relationship is our spiritual hydration, pretty much, because he hydrates us. That.
Yeah, absolutely. And I believe that to be very true. So like we'll take it back to the physical example, right? And so hydration. What is hydration? Because it's a very nuanced word. People think like, oh yeah, I drink a ton of water. So I should be hydrated. And most of the people that I see, most of the people that come into the clinic are not hydrated. They're chronically dehydrated. and all of the water is stored within the bloating. And so on a physical level, there's two primary things that water would need at any given time, depending on the situation. Now, it is very circumstantial, but it needs minerals and it needs structure. And so minerals, salt, and all these micronutrients that can come from sea salts and stuff like that is very important within our water, because that's like, say, if we're a computer, we have to have the motherboard. Otherwise, there's no electricity moving through the body. And so the minerals are like the motherboard. And then you have like the enzymes. So the enzymes are bringing the electricity through the little conduits, and then the hormones are popping it up and down, or like a beehive. So the hive is the body, the honeycomb is the minerals, and without the minerals, there's no honey being made. The worker bees are the enzymes, and the honey is the hormones.
That's a perfect analogy. Yeah, you're preaching the choir. I put sea salt in my water every day.
I love that. That's amazing. Yeah, and so that is critical to our physical hydration, right? The water goes so much further than a physical manifestation. Water, I believe, really is truly a multidimensional. It's a metaphysical experience. And then so what's the other thing? Structure. So structure is important. And so in nature, the way that water structures is through cascades and spirals. If you've ever watched a waterfall, everything is constantly moving in this spiral fashion, that could also be looked at as like the Fibonacci sequence, or whatever you want to call it. And it's like this dance chasing the golden ratio, but never actually getting there because of the physical manifestation of nature. But what happens is when we have water sitting on a shelf for 6 months to a year, or going through these 90-degree angled pipes, it's no longer able to maintain that same structural integrity. So it's actually losing a lot of its natural structure. And so something I like to actually share with people is the tests done by Dr. Hosoria Emoto.
Yes.
And he did multiple different tests, right? But one of them was he put words on jugs of water, negative words, hate, greed, gluttony, the devil, all these like kind of low vibrational words. And then he would put high frequency words, love, joy, peace, God, these different types of words that actually emit frequencies. And then he froze it. He would freeze the water. And then what he would do is he would take that water and put it in a microscope and look at the molecular structure of the water under a microscope. And so the water that had the words like hate and the devil and whatever it was were completely chaotic, had absolutely no structure. They were just a mess, pure chaos. And then the water that had the words like love, joy, peace, so on and so forth, had perfect hexagonal structures. It was like little snowflakes, just beautiful sacred geometry. And so for me, this is a prime indicator that our thoughts and our prayers and our words hold intention. And even more so, that water holds infinite potential for memory. And so on a physical level, the easiest way to actually structure your water, the easiest, most cost-effective way, right? There's fancy gadgets, stuff out there where you can use to structure your water, which I enjoy all those as well. But say I'm out on the road, well, the ultimate water structure is the structured water within our body. And so I love to tell people about, well, do you pray over your food? You can pray over your water. You can set intention and actually pray or set intention into your water. And one that I love is, I love you, I honor you, I appreciate you. Thank you for becoming a part of my body. May you be hydrating to my cells. And just by saying that, I'm actually changing the molecular structure of the water that I'm about to put into my body. So that's pretty amazing. And then, so there is also a lady named Veda Austin who's done similar tests, but gone much deeper into these layers of actually creating pictures in the water. And so all this to say, this is only physical examples of that metaphysical or spiritual water. And like you were saying, our relationship with God is our spiritual hydration. And that is the beauty for me with the whole concept of the breath. Because a lot of people think like, okay, yeah, I breathe, you know,
Well,
everybody breathes.
in the Bible, he even calls himself the well of life.
The well of life. Exactly. Exactly. And so there's many different, um, you know, terminologies, there's many different translations, there's many different words for this concept. But God truly is, source, he truly is the well of life. And so within the breath on a spiritual level, they have the word pneuma, um, which is the Greek word for breath. There's also spire or spirita, which is the Latin root, which means spirit or breath. Yad havahe, to breathe in, to breathe out. All these different, natur in Egyptian means to breathe. And so all these different cultures and all these different spiritual philosophies or spiritual practices somehow came to the same conclusion that the breath is very important.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, and so I'm constantly fascinated. And so I think the breath is our purest, most unadulterated way to create connection with spirit and with our soul. And so I'm fascinated with the concept or the awareness of etymology. So it's like, okay, I say this word, but what does that word actually mean?
Oh, I am too. Yeah, I'm
Um,
all over it.
yeah, and
It's crazy some of the different actual meanings or the breakdown history of the words. I'm all over that too.
yeah, it's amazing. Like even inspire comes from a very similar root as respire, respiration, respire, in Latin, so the inspiration comes from the inhalation. And so when we take words back to the root, like what does it actually mean? So the word uh, nature or natural comes from the Latin root natura, which means to birth or to co-create. And then so the word religion actually comes from the Latin root religio, which means deep reverence or appreciation for. And then we also have that aspire or aspirta, which means breath. And so when I put those words together, my translation, and right, this is merely a subjective perspective, but I think that it holds value, is when we can consciously co-create with God through having deep reverence for natural breathing, we can create this feedback loop of conscious co-creation through natural breathing.
And what were those three words again together?
So it was nature, our natural state, natura, religion or religio, deep reverence, and breath or spirit, spirita. And so basically the way that I translate that into modern day English is deep reverence or appreciation through co-creation and conscious breathing.
That's beautiful.
Thank you.
That's amazing. I love that. Would you, is there any breathwork stuff you'd be willing to share? Any techniques or anything?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely, yeah. And so there's multiple different breathwork techniques that I teach. You can use breathwork from anything from stress relief to relieving anxiety, all the way down into trauma release. So the breath is absolutely so versatile and amazing. So if you think about it, the nervous system is the chief executive system of the body, right? And the only system that can take executive control over the nervous system is the respiratory system.
Right.
So it's
So
like,
it's almost like a muscle for our emotions is kind of, maybe you can think of it that way.
wow, amazing. I love that analogy. It is a muscle for our emotions. So the more consciously we can breathe through co-creation with God, the more we can actually move those emotions, create energy and motion, because that's what emotions want to do. Um, so I love that. It's a muscle, absolutely. And it actually is a muscle, right? The diaphragm.
Yeah.
The diaphragm, Well, it's technically it's a conglomeration of different fascial lines, but it's basically muscle. But yeah, so you can use breath for stress reduction. You can use breath for deeper level of self-awareness in the moment, and you can also use breathing mechanics to help yourself become more coherent or more balanced all the time. And so first off, I'll talk a little bit about breathing mechanics. So this is something that people can do all the time, anytime they think about it, just to basically create more symbiosis within their body all the time, at any given moment. And so this is more of a subtle thing. It's going to be a very subtle, these breathing mechanics will have subtle shifts over a long duration of time. And then I'll show you another breath work technique that can have not so subtle, very, very prominent shifts very quickly. And so breathing mechanics, basically, the way we can break it down simply in layman's terms is breathing fast and through the mouth is going to be sympathetic or fight or flight. It's going to stimulate your fight or flight nervous system and your ANS, your autonomic nervous system. Breathing slow and low and through the nose is going to be parasympathetic, or it's going to be rest and digest and relax. And so anytime we're breathing fast in through the mouth into our chest like this, or we're hyperventilating, like if you think if something happens, like if you get into a situation and you know, you stimulate your sympathetic nervous system, like say, you know, ancient ancestors, they had a mountain lion come up and you hold your breath, right? And so those breath patterns actually become caught in the body. And so the way that the body wants to breathe overall is slow, low, and through the nose. It could also be called the LSD breath, or light, slow, and deep. And so another component to this breath, and so I'll try and break it down, right? Like I could spend months talking about this, but I'll spend like 5 minutes. So we can later. But basically, we want to breathe light, almost as if not to even move our hairs in our nostrils. We want to breathe slow so we can give our diaphragm time to expand and contract as we breathe. And we want to breathe deep, almost as if to feel the breath into our lower diaphragm. And you can even feel it into your pelvis, like into your perineum, which is at the root of your body or at the base of your spine. And then the last component is what could also be called coherent or frequency breathing, which is exactly 5.5 seconds out, 5.5 seconds in, but we'll just say 5 seconds in, 5 seconds out to make it easy, making for about 4.5 to 6 breaths a minute. And so basically, another aspect is we also have 3 different passageways in our nose. We have our nasal passage, our mucosal passage, which is at about 45 degrees, and then straight back is how our nose wants to breathe. Straight back. And so basically, this breath can be done anytime you're thinking about it. So almost as if it was like a squirt gun game at the fair, and you're trying to hit that target right in the hole. Otherwise, the lever doesn't go up and you don't get the prize. So basically what that looks like is I'll even count. You guys can do it with me. And just do it to the best of your ability. I don't know if there's going to be any visuals here. But basically we're going to breathe in. So we'll go ahead and breathe out. And we'll breathe in through the nose for 5 seconds. So breathe in and breathe back. And allow your diaphragm and your belly to expand and breathe out. And generally your breath would not even make a noise, but for demonstration purposes, I'll make noise. So breathe in and pull back. And breathe out.
That's
really
incredible.
yeah. And so that's just 2 breaths. So we'll breathe for, say 3 more breaths. So
Okay.
breathe in. And breathe out. Really let your belly retract and contract. And then breathe in, and we're breathing back into the back of the throat. And breathe out and just let it go. And we'll do 1 more to make a full minute. So breathe in. And expand and breathe out. Beautiful. And just go ahead and hold that exhale for just a moment. And then just notice any subtle shifts that may have occurred in your awareness. Maybe sound is sharper, color is brighter. You might feel a little bit of relaxation. And that's 1 minute.
That's amazing. Like I feel like almost lightheaded in a good way,
Yeah,
just like clear headed.
good way. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And so absolutely, absolutely. That's amazing. Yeah. And
Oh
so
my
this is
goodness.
how that's how your body just wants to breathe. And so the lightheadedness is actually your body's lack of ability to utilize carbon dioxide. And so when we can't use carbon dioxide properly, we can't actually use oxygen properly because our body actually uses carbon dioxide to shuttle oxygen from the hemoglobin in the blood into the cells where it needs to be to transport.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
So in school we learned, oh, we breathe in oxygen, we breathe out carbon dioxide.
It's just a waste. Get out of there. Don't think
Yes,
about it.
yeah.
Yeah.
If you think about it, okay, well, let's bring it back to the fundamentals. We are carbon-based life forms. So that tells you anything. Carbon dioxide is actually pretty important. And so really what's happening is we're actually breathing in and out oxygen, and we're breathing in and out carbon dioxide. We're actually breathing in and out roughly a dozen gases at any given moment. And so it's not about that carbon dioxide is a waste gas. It's just that we don't want it in excess, and we want it to be used properly. And so what happens when we start to breathe properly, and then there's more nuance within this too, because we could do something called air hunger, which actually increases your body's ability to utilize carbon dioxide exponentially. It makes it so the body actually gets less carbon dioxide. So it's like, oh, we're not getting as much. We got to use this better. And so it will actually create almost like a lightheadedness for a little bit until your body like acclimates. It's basically like if you were to go up in altitude, and your body's not used to that little amount of oxygen,
Right.
and it's not used to using the carbon dioxide properly, it will actually give you an effect. And it can actually be kind of mind altering.
Yeah. No kid. I bet. So is that the kind of breathing that you do all the time? Do you like just do it subconsciously at this point?
That's just how I breathe. Yeah.
Wow.
Well, obviously I'm talking right now, so I am off
Right.
gassing and breathing a little bit through my mouth just from talking. But anytime I'm not talking, that's just how I breathe. Um, so yeah, yeah, and it does take time because you have to recode or retrain the body, retrain the diaphragm, retrain the lungs, especially when you have people who have been mouth breathers or have been breathing this way their entire life. But I mean, night and day. I mean, this can affect every system in the body. We're talking nervous system, cardiovascular system, metabolism, circadian rhythm. Every system is affected by gas because if you think about it, the gases, so the cardiovascular system is the system that transports all nutrients through the body, but the respiratory system is the one that's bringing it in, right? And
Right.
so we're actually breathing in a lot more than even just gases. We're actually breathing in light and nutrients. Isn't that crazy?
It is.
So we are actually breathing light, and that is the spiritual hydration, right? That is the spiritual well, because we are breathing, but we are also being breathed.
That's
So
incredible.
we are breathing, but we are also breathing the breath of God. Every
Right.
time now, we are actually breathing that larger breath of God. And so anytime we slow down enough to actually feel the breath and to feel the subtle energies of our environment, you will notice you actually start, and even right now, like you could even call it entheogenic, right? The entheogenic word comes from and means to be close or to be one with God. And so the entheogenic is commonly misconceived with the word psychedelic, which means to see something that's not there, but that's not really what I think that this is. I don't think it's seeing something that's not there. It's becoming more aware of what already is.
Yeah.
And so as we start to slow down, and this happens to me just about every day, as I start to slow down my awareness, slow down my breath, or even speed up my breath, I start to notice like the ripples of life, right? And to me, that is God's breath. That is the breath of God being breathed through every living thing. And so the more that we become more aware of our breath, and the more that we can tap into the subtle energies of life and of God, the more that we can actually notice things in our environment that we wouldn't notice if we hadn't slowed down.
It changes your awareness.
Yes, it drastically increases self-awareness.
So with proper breathing, another big factor for it is good posture as well, right?
Oh, absolutely. Oh man. So the rabbit hole goes very deep. um, so yes. And it's kind of funny too, because this thing kind of just sort of happened. It happened synonymously. All this stuff just starts to fall into play when you increase self-awareness. You just want to sit more straight. You want to have an erect spine. You feel when you're out of alignment, because the breath is awareness, right? The breath of life is the hydration, is the nutrients of God. And so as we start to breathe in this way, you'll notice that if you're crimped over, or you have like what's called kyphosis, where your forward head posture and your shoulders are tilted in, this forward head tilt posture, and then your pelvis is tucked under and your hip flexors are under engaged, you can't breathe fully. Your diaphragm can't expand, your lungs can't expand, and so you're going to be limited to the degree that you can breathe. So as you start to breathe, and that's why this stuff is important, but to me, it's not as important as teaching the breath, because the breath will realign. And so the spine is incredibly important, because as we start to breathe, and then so the last technique I taught you or showed you was frequency or coherent breathing, or just breathing mechanics. But the one that I'm about to show you here in a minute is more of a activating breath. And so I do breathing mechanics, but I also do breathing journeys, where I take people on journeys with their breath to allow themselves to move that energy, or that emotion, or that stuck, whatever it is. But as we start to breathe, you'll start to notice this strange sensation within your spine, where it wants to become erect, but it also wants to move as we start to breathe. And so as you open up your lungs and you engage deeper parts of your diaphragm, your spine starts to engage with that as well, because there is multitudes, there's a pharmacopoeia of chemicals within our brain that moves through the spine, and it moves through the body, through the different organs. And so peptides in the brain, you create these catecholamines, or these neural peptides, these different peptides within the brain that then cycle through the body to create hormones. And so a couple of those are, you've got dopamine, you've got norepinephrine and adrenaline, you've got cortisol, you've also got serotonin, and then you have oxytocin, vasopressin, and all these other neuropeptides or hormones, as well as CSF, which is cerebral spinal fluid. And so as we start to breathe, we start to move. We start to move these substances, these liquids, these hydrating forces in our body. And so it's not just metaphorical that breathing is the hydration from the well of God. It's actually literally as we breathe and we start to engage these these different centers within our body that have either been dormant or never breathed into, we're actually activating the Jordan, we're activating the river of life within our spine, cerebral spinal fluid. We are also activating at a certain level DMT, the dimethyltryptamine within the brain. And that is also known as the spirit molecule. So this stuff is, like I said, the rabbit hole goes deep. And I
Yeah,
don't want to, I
I
don't want
could
to scare.
listen to you for months too. Oh my, such a wealth of knowledge. That's incredible. So did you learn all this yourself, just your own self-research, or
I mean, I guess it depends on what's your definition of self.
fair, very
Now I
fair
could spend
enough.
days just talking about that. But yeah, so it's a little bit of self-exploration and then intuition and these kind of like prophetic downloads, if you will, but also then kind of um, reaffirming and checking that back with, you know, external sources. So a lot of it started within, and then I got curious, and then you know how these synchronicities,
Yeah.
these miraculous moments, and the ever eternal now just start to happen as you start to open up to possibility. I just kind of got curious, and these things would just sort of find me. It's hard
The
to explain.
puzzle formed itself in front of you, pretty
Yeah,
much.
yeah, it's kind of like I was just like the observer of all this, but I was an active participant, but also like a non-judgmental observer. And that's something I realized too. The more judgment that I have, the more that there's a pullback from my ability to expand into these the nuances of spirituality, if you will, for myself. Um, and so I feel like for me, the most authentic relationship with God is not holding on to any particular belief too strongly. And that's kind of what allows me to have found this stuff, I guess.
Yeah. And what I would say with that, the only belief that I hold on to, I have a very similar mentality, except for that God is real, Jesus is our savior, just holding on to that as the foundation,
Yes. So I think that
like a focal point. So then when anything else changes, the ground isn't taken out from under you. Because a lot of people, they can't, they when they hold on to stuff like you're talking about, they get so defensive or whatever because they're standing on that reality as their firm foundation, and they
yeah,
can't let go of it. They can't not have a reality, so they have to stick with it.
absolutely. Absolutely. And so, you know, if God is unconditional love, right, within the definition, there is no condition. There's
Yeah.
no conditions in unconditional love. So whatever your question is, the answer is yes. So it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. So we're going to see what we believe. And if we are limited to a limited framework of belief, our reality is actually going to reaffirm that.
Yeah,
And
selective
that's also
attention.
selected exactly. And this works within the brain too, right? The RAS, the reticular activating system, actually shuts out all that is not important to our driving dopaminergic goals, the foveal vision. And so that's another thing is we can use our senses to tap into these different states. But I do believe it's important to have a structure, right? You want a structure, and that's where um, understanding, and it can be put simply as love yourself and love God. And what's the most pure way that you can do that? And that looks different for each person. And so this is why I love. So I think we talked about this before, but you're familiar with Carl Jung, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So Carl Jung coined the term individuation. He says that the person's personal spiritual experience is the most important because it's theirs and they're having it. And so the more that I step into individuation, if you will, the less that I judge other people for where they're at in their spiritual experience. And I also hold close to my heart that I love myself, and the way that I'm able to do that most authentically is by loving God, and also by having love and awareness of the living, tangible, presence of Jesus Christ. But I do think that that can be lost in translation from certain people based off their perception, their perceptual awareness, their filters will actually not allow them to fully hear what it is that I'm saying, but only hear what I'm saying to the degree of their filters, if that makes sense.
That's such a good way of putting it. Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, because I've had too many encounters. I've had too many personal experiences, and this is why I don't hold on to belief too strongly. But I, but I can't discount a personal experience, right?
Right.
I've had too many personal experiences for me to go, no,
To just
no, there's
write
no
off
such
other
thing.
people. Yeah, I'm the
Yeah,
same
yeah.
way.
It's like, oh no, there's no God, and Jesus was, just a parable in the Bible or whatever it is. It's like, no, I don't think so. In fact, I don't feel so. I've had direct experience with these energies. So I'm gonna go ahead and go with yes.
Yeah, that's the most, I
Um,
mean, it's such a confusing time period with so much, too much information where you have
yes,
contradictory stuff on anything that you look at, any question you have, you're going to see the yes answer and the no answer online. So
yeah,
you really have to dial in your intuition, your relationship with God, and your discernment on what you know is true, on what you believe. And that's so
absolutely,
important.
absolutely.
With what you were
It's
saying,
paramount.
what you were saying before about everyone having, I really believe everyone has the right to their own journeys. I mean, we wouldn't have free will otherwise. And it really is insecure people that are the most judgmental, and they have the most forceful about their beliefs onto others because they're trying to reaffirm their own beliefs by forcing it on other people. So when you're really secure, like you are exactly, you can just let other people go with their flow, go with their journey, plant seeds when you can, but you don't feel that calling to just force everything on them because you already know what's true.
Absolutely, absolutely. Just like spinal chills, words of wisdom. That's 100%. I couldn't have put it better myself. Um, and because I think that like a lot of that is projection, right? You like you're saying insecurity. It's actually lack of self-awareness, lack of self-identity, right? Embodiment of the soul that causes them to project these ideologies, right? Because these ultimately, when someone projects onto someone else, it's all of the mind. It's
Yeah.
all an insecurity of the mind because it's a thought form, right? It's not a felt sense. A felt sense in the body is much different than a thought form. In fact, the exact opposite, right? I'd even go as far to say, as a thought form, is what a lot of people would call a demon. Demon, or the indigenous culture would call it watika, the mind virus. So a lot of people don't even realize that they're actually subject to psycho-spiritual parasites that have hijacked their consciousness, has overruling their actual true intuition, which is a felt sense within the body. So it's heart mind coherence,
Oh
not just
yeah.
mind, you're going to hear it, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's the
Um,
Muslim, the Islam tradition. They talk about demons. The Buddhism even talks about the mind virus, like you're saying, the spiritual parasites.
yeah,
It's another one of those things that all cultures came to the conclusion of.
there
Um,
seems to be some big overlap with the fact that there is these kind of,
there is
low
evil.
vibrational
Evil
entities,
exists. Yeah.
evil, within the spiritual realm, and it doesn't have our best interest in mind.
Yeah. And that's something I think a lot of people, I don't mean to interrupt, I'm so sorry.
No, 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 you're fine. Go for it.
But the way I tell people is that it's almost like spirituality. So many spiritual people nowadays just want to go it alone. I don't need God. I'm just going to do whatever, my astrology, my this or that, my crystals, whatever. Not that I'm against all that, but um, they don't include God in it, which it's almost like I have the analogy of it's like a little kid because our I mean spiritually we're all just little kids. Like we don't know what's going on really in the spiritual world, and it's like going to New York City, a 4-year-old just wandering through the streets saying, "Oh, I can do this myself. I'll be fine." Like, why would you do that when you have a guide that can navigate your way through? And it's very it's kind of a reckless and dangerous philosophy that's grown so popular, is this deep spiritualism without God. I'm just a
Yeah.
little bit ranting there, but yeah.
No, absolutely. I agree with you 100% because I do believe that like there is um more helpful and less helpful spiritual paths, right? Um, and then ultimately, paradoxically, I feel like they all lead back to the same place in a strange way. So like I think that ties into why I find importance in the individuation process, right? Like letting people
They
have
have
their
to go through it.
individuals, yep,
Yeah.
go through it to get to it. And then paradoxically, the strange part about that evil is, right, like the demonic forces or the low vibrational energies is, even though it may not be within their sphere of awareness, they're ultimately still being helpful in a twisted way.
Yeah.
And that's a hard concept to wrap your mind around because it's not something of the mind. But it's like, and I can't recall the specific verse at this moment, but essentially it's that all things are working out for our greater good, but there is a a more helpful path. There is a path that can lead you um, through more ease because you have your parent, right?
Right.
And and when you allow yourself to actually be guided in a way that is spiritually affirmative, then you're not as shooting in the dark, if you will. It's like putting oh, and another analogy for like say like the spiritual tools, right? Like you were saying the crystals and I don't remember what else you were saying. Because it's like all of these things, everything contains energy, everything contains a frequency, and everything potentially can be a tool, but it's like putting the cart before the horse. And so the problem is not using a tool, but it's thinking you found the answer outside of
Yes. It puts
God.
you in a box of your
Yeah,
understanding. Because if
yeah,
you're doing that, if you're just using a tool, and like let's say if you're using a hammer, but you don't even know what a house is, much less how to build a house, what good is that going to do? A lot of people like they use crystals, they use the different stuff, but they don't even know what a spirit is. They don't really know what energy is. And
exactly.
so they don't have that, they haven't given themselves enough credit to do that inner dive first to get deeper understanding. And a lot of spiritual teachers nowadays kind of push the same thing of just do this quick meditation, easy peasy, you're all good. That's all you need to do. A 30-minute thing once a week, you're done. Instead of going on the journey of a lifetime that never ends. I mean, we still all have so we could learn for 12 lifetimes more, way more than that, obviously, but yeah. And they just scratch the surface and I think that's it. And they put themselves in a box again.
Yeah, it's just like a diet, right? Like, oh, I'm going to go on the keto diet, or I'm going to go on a paleo
Trend.
diet,
Yeah.
or whatever, frugivore, carnivore, all these ors. You can go on a diet, but it's like if you're not making a lifestyle change, it's going to do you no good. You're going to gain the weight back, and you're going to be worse off than you were before because now you have metabolic syndrome and you can't metabolize carbohydrates.
Exactly.
It's the same thing as using these tools outside of the awareness of what spirituality's fundamentals really are.
Right.
um which you gotta have a solid foundation to your house, like you were saying.
Yeah.
uh and you can have a hammer, you can have a jigsaw, you can have all the equipment in the world, you can have the top notch um uh tools to build a house, but if you don't know how to use any of those tools and you don't have the blueprint to the house, then you're not going to be able to build it.
Not gonna get anywhere. Right.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of like you were saying, it's become trendy. They're corporatizing spirituality. What a crazy time that's even being corporatized now. You know what I mean? With all like the spiritual teachers or whatever that charge $500 for a 30-minute class or something. It's kind of wild.
Yep. Yep. It really is. It's a strange time. And I do think that, like you were saying, there's so much in the age of information, there's so much online that it can be really confusing and like overstimulating, like system overload.
Right.
Um, and that's also kind of by design to create so
It
much
is.
confusion because, and I think we were speaking on this earlier as well, like talking about these different cultures and these different energies or entities that they speak on. And one of them is Ahriman. Ahriman was the worship of material things. Um, and so from a certain perspective, it's like we are in the age of Ahriman because people are looking for yes, no answers, and they are idealizing and worshiping their technology as if these little black boxes had all the answers. Like, oh, I'm just gonna. Google didn't tell me that that's what it was, so I'm not gonna believe you. It's like, well, maybe you should develop a relationship with God and with your intuition,
Yeah.
and really have a better understanding of what is a yes no, because things aren't always as simple as Google told me yes no.
Right. Or then the teachers, they just want all the answers just given to them. This, they want like a checklist of spirituality, even, this is this, that is that. But the whole, at least for me, I feel like a big part of the spiritual journey for each person is simply asking questions and
Yeah,
like asking deeper and deeper questions, not necessarily even getting the answer, but just simply by asking the question, it opens up your mind. Okay, I don't know it really. Something I thought was so simple as even like, are rocks alive? Simple
yeah,
question like that.
yeah, absolutely. And it's not even about getting the answer. It's
No.
about asking the question. And in order to, yes, like you were saying, expand, it's like you do have to ask the right questions. And a lot of times those questions won't come to us if we don't quiet the mind and expand the heart into the space around us to know that, you know, to pick up on these awarenesses. Because I think for
Right.
me, a lot of the questions have come from just being silent with myself and with God. You
Yeah,
know, a lot of the
absolutely.
questions come. It's like this feedback loop. It's like God is providing the question and potentially the answer.
No, it is. Yeah. I mean,
Not right in the
that's
moment, but as life unfolds, it becomes more clear.
right.
Um,
And Jesus depicts himself as the teacher, the rabbi. So really seeking him out as a student is just so life-changing. Because like you said, you really do get a master's class right in your own head. Right. It's
yeah,
it's incredible. And going back to the awareness stuff, would you say part of expanding your awareness is removing those filters that you were talking about way before? You know how you said like in your brain you only see through the different filters of lenses and stuff, but by asking questions and expanding what you believe is possible, what your awareness is, you remove the filters to help your brain perceive more. Kind of. Does that make
yeah,
sense?
yeah. No, absolutely, absolutely. And I think that that's what it's all about: asking the right questions and suspending what we because the thing is, if we already know something for certain, there's no way we can learn anything new.
Yeah.
So when we can suspend what we know to be true and allow ourselves to open up to the possibility of what could be true, and like I was saying, that's not to the that's not to the degree where we're sacrificing our foundation, right, our spiritual foundation, but it is to the degree where we are curious, like
Yeah.
childhood innocence. um it allows us to be open to receiving more spiritual awareness or spiritual direction or answers, if you
To
will,
just to grow pretty
to
much.
grow. Yeah,
Yeah.
spiritual growth. Yeah, yeah, because we can't grow like um who was it? I can't remember who said this quote, but basically, you can't solve a problem with the same thinking that created it.
Yeah.
Like you have to almost shift your mindset, and a lot of times that comes from creating more coherence within the heart. There's a lot of indigenous tribes too. I can't even remember their terminologies for this, but they talk about the three brains.
Yeah,
Talk
they
about the gut, the
yeah,
heart, and the
all the
mind.
brain cells in the heart. It's
Yeah,
so I love that. It's so fascinating.
they actually
Have you tried that yourself?
tried what?
Thinking through your heart?
Well, yeah. In fact, I try to live through my heart as much as possible because I feel like that's the seat of the soul, um, potentially. But um, I don't know about thinking through my heart. Yes, but I do try to move through my heart or keep awareness within that space.
So whenever you want to try a little technique that a lot of shamans do is they just whenever they have a question, they simply touch their heart, bring their awareness there, and you just let your heart respond. In the same way you hear a little bit of dialogue in your head whenever you're thinking, you eventually, like once you get more and more, it's like a muscle, right? Once you get more and more in tune with it, you can hear the thoughts coming from down there.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so I think I do that to a degree. For me, my awareness is like actually just above the physical heart and back towards the spine. It's like a little point, kind of in between my like the cross on the body, if you will, like with the
Right.
arms and the torso.
Oh,
And I
I
just
love
like
that.
bring my awareness into that space and sit with it until I get a clear answer. Um, but yeah, I try to live as much of my life that way as possible. I think that that's something that's been one of my gifts um, from God is being heart centered. Um,
That's the name of the show.
yeah,
But I could talk with you for, like you said, months. This is just incredible. But let's do a cutoff point because probably going a bit long. Thank you so much for coming on the show. This is incredible. I love how very on the same page we are. This is really just meeting you is very really healing for me. It's really awesome to see.
absolutely, brother. Yeah, reflected.
So, do you have a website or anything, any links or anything you want to share out?
Um, I actually currently do not. I'm like the least technologically savvy person ever. I'm surprised I even have a mic right now. But if somebody does want to connect with me, they're welcome to go to David M Wellness at David M Wellness on Instagram, and just shoot me a direct message and I'll connect with them. I do have a bunch of platforms coming up soon, but not right now.
All right, awesome. All right, you have a great day, David. Thank you
All
again.
right.
Much love, man.
All
God
right. Thanks.
bless.
You too, Will.